Hello. So first of all, I'm really sorry for not being able to attend BSides Athens this year. I really wanted to be there, and unfortunately, this could not be helped. The talk is One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish. It's mainly a record of kind of my thoughts and processes through finalising and doing my dissertation through my last year of university. So, kind of the first thing first, I guess, is the introduction to me. My name is Kaitlyn Garratley. I recently started working as a security analyst at SecureWorks here in Edinburgh. Before that, I studied ethical hacking and countermeasures at Aberdeen Dundee. Within that, I was in the Ethical Hacking Society. You might have seen us around. We go to conferences quite often. Throughout university, I really struggled to find my main focus. So every year, the topic of my individual project changed quite a lot from first year, where the focus was the cost of warfare, comparing the cost to build and create Stuxnet to build and create attacks such as the M1 Abrams, which I presented at BSides London in 2012. Then in second year, looking at firewalls, and then public Wi-Fi in third year. To finally this year focusing on phishing attacks and why they happen. One thing that kind of remained clear to me throughout all 4 years that my focus was, and it kind of always probably will be, how to make security easy for people to understand and kind of how they can rely on themselves upon instead of relying on everyone else. So kind of keeping this in mind, this talk, my hope is to discuss the issue of phishing, to try and understand and show it from the other side. This will involve the research techniques carried out by other people, as well as ways in which people aim to combat phishing altogether. After briefly looking at this, I will look into my own dissertation and at the points that worked, as well as those that just kind of really didn't. And then lastly, my plan is to look at the future and how not only just my research, but how everyone can kind of change little bits and obvious steps kind of really need to be taken. So I plan to look into those. Okay, so most people, especially those probably listening to this talk, have at least a simple understanding of phishing attacks. However, for me, the anti-phishing working group has a clear definition that sums everything together and takes away the ifs and buts and the odd ends here and there. So, phishing is a criminal mechanism employing both social engineering and technical subterfuge to steal customers' personal identity data and financial account credentials. So, for anyone that has spent any time looking into phishing, whether it's researching it, researching either side, so or anything into the numbers or kind of just on the news, it's clear why it's an issue. The numbers related to it are absolutely staggering. So phishing scams make up over 80% of the emails coming into accounts every day. So that's not your inbox, that's just the emails going into an account. And with this, at least 28% of the working day is spent dealing with emails, according to McKinsey Global Institute. So that's responding in any way. So that's replying, reading, kind of looking at. And then the total number of unique phishing websites observed by the APWG in the first 3 months of 2016 was 289,371. In those same 3 months, 20 million new malware samples were captured. This breaks down to 227,000 a day. So with numbers this high, it's no surprise that in 2005 alone, the amount of people in the US that gave their information directly as a response to a fraudulent email was over 2 million. This cost directly $1.2 billion. To kind of put it in for kind of our local, well, my local economy, GetSafe Online showed a 21% rise in 2015, which resulted in a cost of £174 million over the space of a year for British consumers. And then with that, the average 10,000 employee company spends £3.7 million a year dealing with phishing attacks and their backlash. So these are all just numbers relating to real life statistics. When research figures are inputted as well, it gets scary to see how little people really do understand. So we will look more into various research methods, but for now, just kind of food for thought. 72% of 921 people clicked and followed a link when they appeared from a friend. So this was a test group that had been told they were being tested. They were fully aware that they were looking for phishing scams, and they still clicked. So kind of the real question, I guess, is, well, why does it work? I was always the same. Every technical person I spoke to have been, well, how can people be that stupid? But phishing works exceptionally well. It isn't especially difficult to carry out and can reap a massive benefits. It relies on different factors all playing together to get the required result. I'm not going to talk about the details in the emails that make people click or the techniques into cloning to make them look real. This talk is kind of based on the trust people have, so it will look at not even the reasons why people click, but yeah, I suppose so why it happens. Multiple researchers and papers have found that where people know what phishing attacks are or spam emails are, they don't think about them. The common misconception is that they won't fall prey because they don't have anything worth stealing, or they believe that others just kind of have more to steal or more to take. It's easy for us to follow the kind of what's happening, and it's easy for us to know at least a little about computers to say phishing emails are so common, surely people know. Well, unfortunately, people really don't. For the vast part, people accept that their spam filter will protect them from all levels of emails, and every site online is secure, because otherwise, why would it be allowed to be online? Phishing is something that most people are aware of, whether it be simple knowledge that they shouldn't click the emails in their spam box, or to people writing their own filters or rules. The issue is like most things in the fact that no one believes it's going to happen until it happens to them. With such high numbers relating to phishing, it's clear why so many people choose it as their research topic. The research people do tends to go two ways: protect people from and remove phishing attacks completely, and into the techniques and to carrying out a successful attack. For this research and for my kind of papers and my dissertation, I looked into the papers relating to preventing and protecting. I had no real interest in the making of malware and phishing attacks. So this research kind of breaks down into two ways. The common themes I found while going through the papers was taking two groups and seeing their reactions to different emails and scenarios, and then also developing training tools such as games and apps to teach people about phishing. Taking the first group, it has the obvious flaw that to test someone, you generally have to tell them they're being tested. So the common test is to tell one group and to train one group that they're looking for phishing attacks, and tell the other one, give them no training, and just kind of ask them to keep an eye out for anything that might happen. Surely the issue that's clear to me is clear to everyone. You're still telling them you're going to be testing them. Heightening someone's responses lowers the accuracy. The second common technique usually involves a lot more training, so developing a method to naturally develop people's knowledge on phishing. As with how you'd expect, so many researchers and people have attempted to perfect this. It's such a broad topic to fully go into, but there are some amazing papers and documentation on the different training people have developed. The idea of using games and different interactive methods has exploded in recent years. It has shown how when you engage people a lot more, the information seems to stick when they're asked about it later. So I suppose spam filters, the public saving grace. The issue is people rely on them fully, 100%. They don't know how they work or even really what they do. And every email provider swears by theirs, and you have to understand that. They get rid of so many emails based on signatures, email accounts, different previous email history, and things like that. Millions of emails are sent to our spam every day. If this isn't just to protect people from putting information into fraudulent emails, surely as well you've got to look at the side where it stops our important emails being hidden by the massive phishing ones. So with pop-ups being generated from just about every site we visit, add-ons and browser extensions are becoming an obvious thing to use for everyone, especially with app stores for browsers making it easier for them to use than ever. I suppose the point I'm trying to kind of get to is the point I got, and that was that something isn't working. Phishing is costing millions of pounds a year and still affects people from all knowledge, backgrounds, all walks of life, I suppose. If it's not what people don't understand, it's that they truly don't believe it would affect them. It's the mentality of believing you're safe because you've never been robbed before. People can't take away from the fact that there doesn't need to be a link. They can't understand that it's just someone, well, it's not even just someone, it's a machine that's trying to contact as many people as it can and get as many responses as they can. They're not in it for a personal link. So when I was thinking about how to approach my fourth year project, I was pretty lost, and I was for a while. Not having personally been affected by phishing at all, probably like most people listening, I had no idea what made people fall for attacks or kind of why anyone would almost be that stupid, I suppose. So that was kind of the key reason I chose the subject. The research I went into was kind of what I did. It looked a lot at different training techniques and how they had failed and different things that can be taken from each one and kind of merged together. My research showed me that in many ways people really just didn't understand more than anything else. The things that tried to fix it, such as toolbars and pop-ups, they just kind of scared them. So what people are told about pop-ups is to leave them. They're probably malware, don't click on them. That's the presumption. So they think they're all bad. Everything led to trying to help people understand and know what was kind of happening with their information. The idea developed from looking at what people use. So there was no kind of point in me doing Firefox on Linux because people use Windows and Chrome. So I decided I was going to build a tool that worked by acting as an absolute filter, that the user would have full control. They would have to have full control. The purpose was to ensure someone could live with and understand phishing. It might be there and we might not be able to get rid of it, but they need to understand it doesn't have to affect them. So for me, the tool split quite nicely into 3 sections. Your first section, sign up, was kind of just like every other application out there. You sign up for the services kind of type thing. This was made with an email address, a phone number, and a password. So unique codes were sent to both the email and the phone number. You would input them, link in your account. You would then generate a password that had to be 12 characters long, and it was then secured in a kind of standard way. So it made use of kind of how you'd expect standard two-factor authentication to use. So then once you were all kind of signed up and it was installed on the machine, the browser, you would kind of then give it permission to monitor your browser. This is where kind of the tricky bit came in really, because to monitor a browser, you kind of have to get someone to trust the fact you're not just going to mirror everything you type. So to do this and ensure it was done in a secured way, I used a pre-written tool. This was a widely available on Chrome tool, and it has been for years. It was called Session Buddy. It was used as it has straightforward user input. I tested a good few different kind of browser monitoring tools to see for the exports and for user input, and this one I was able to generate the browser history and export it in a text list to be really easily added to the filter. So the filter was then generated and continuously updated to have the latest browser session involved. So the list then installed all the sites visited, it deleted duplicates, and then moved the order to see regular visits and what people expected kind of to use the most. The user can then go through, delete, modify, and change different things depending on the amount of emails they kind of require or want. And if they want no emails from a site that they happen to go on, they just move it into a blacklist, where this will overwrite the whitelist and stop emails from coming in altogether. So the filters were then applied directly to the email account, and this is done through the settings. It's quite a simple process. Once you've applied the filter, you just declare that it would be the only filter allowed. So the only emails that can come in are those on this list. So the idea was to kind of keep it as simple as possible for the user. So the tool worked in terms of filtering the emails and monitoring browser usage. The only emails coming through were those on the whitelist, and if something had been placed on the blacklist, it wouldn't appear. I tested on one of my own accounts so that I knew there were definitely emails kind of going in and out of the account, and it worked. I turned off my other filters, and I had probably what I'd expect in spam wise. I didn't have any from sites I hadn't accessed. However, in my eyes, it was about getting a balance between user experience and giving them the ability to kind of understand what's going on. So the functionality worked, and it depends completely on what someone was expecting from the tool itself. Everyone's going to read into the dissertation in the paper differently, but on one hand, the tool needed the user to manually do each step. Otherwise, it was just another application that wouldn't help anyone to build knowledge, and it was just running in the background. And then you have to look at it from the other side of the spectrum. Technology is about making life easier and more accessible, so why wouldn't that be the right way to do it? So I suppose to kind of decide, and not really decide, but kind of come up with a kind of conclusion for my dissertation, I had to break it down pretty much into good versus bad. So the email filtered correctly, and the user knew exactly what was going on because they did each step themselves. They knew where all the pieces came together. It was a simple process that they just followed. So we all take our computing knowledge for granted, and even the most educated person can be completely oblivious to anything to do with computers. So with this technique, the user kind of gains their knowledge hands-on. It's not about me telling someone, oh, this is how you'd find it, this is how an email filter works. It's them doing it and them using a simple process to do it themselves. And then you've kind of got to look at the complete flip side, where the tool wasn't seamless. And this really made it less likely for people to use. So every year, phones, tablets, and computers are all being developed to make people's life easier, to be done quicker. And because when we want things done, we want them done now. We're not willing to wait. So whereas You, me, people that actually are into computers and into the knowledge behind them, they're quite happy sitting running a scan, and they're quite happy sitting checking settings just to kind of make sure things are okay and running correctly. Regular kind of people, non-tech people, why would they even consider these things? And then when pop-ups happen, to tell them these things are happening, they don't trust pop-ups. They've been told not to trust pop-ups. Technology is just a dangerous circle that continuously goes round and round. So in my eyes, the tool wasn't seamless enough, and it might just encourage people to be complacent, and they do it that one time and then they'd never update their filter, they'd never update their database. And finding that balance of where it does that itself and where the user has to do it was very difficult. So kind of my what now type slide, I suppose. Instead of doing multiple different slides on where I kind of not see the future going, but feel where we could go in the future and what kind of could happen, I just did one. So in the nicest way, we need to be, as an industry, less ignorant to people. Not people as in cultures and things like that, but people as in just kind of different knowledge levels in computing. It's the same way that we can tell, oh, this is a piece of malware, it might be doing this to a computer. It's the same premise in any profession. Being told what is wrong with you before you've had the x-ray, or a mechanic knowing what is wrong with the car by the sound of the engine. It's in the understanding we build and we develop, both kind of through hard work and naturally, I suppose. There needs to be a new way to teach people from early on how to be secure. If we can justify teaching programming and developing to children in primary schools, surely we can teach them to develop their own way to be safe. There are apps for everything these days, and if we can think of a fun, interactive way that can naturally develop and progress through a child's life to make them secure and to make them know what security is, surely we should be using that. Obviously, teaching kids is one thing, but then for adults, there kind of needs to be an interactive way to learn as well. We need to step away from the let's go on a corporate training day and just kind of give them a one-off training. People need to be taught not to be complacent and kind of not to expect these things to happen. They need to kind of take it all into their own knowledge and know how to go into their own way of doing it. This is where, for me, the focus needed to be. So computing is so easy. We all know that. It's just teaching people and showing people how easy it can be. My idea was to develop the simplest way possible to teach people. And I think that even the step I slightly missed out on was asking people how they'd find it helpful instead of just assuming they need a training course and assuming it's their own responsibility. Yes, it's partly their responsibility, but we expect a doctor to tell us why we're sick without patronizing us. Surely it's time every other industry, especially our one, learns to do the same. Okay, so kind of the last thing before I finish, because you might have noticed I love numbers. If there ever is a time to teach people to look after themselves, surely it's now. So when I did this research, it was the beginning of April in 2016. There was just under 3.5 billion people using the internet across the world. So 46% of the world's population was online. With that, between us all, both legitimate and spam emails, 2 million emails are sent a second. Surely it's about time we stop just throwing thousands of papers at it and kind of come together and think of a new way to keep people safe. So thank you for listening and I suppose watching because it's a video. My Twitter handle is on screen. It is at Kaitlyn4495. Feel free to message me and I can give everyone the references and figures for kind of everything above. And things like that. And I suppose kind of answer any questions you might have because obviously I'm not there to answer them. Once again, thank you so much for listening and I hope the conference is brilliant and I know it will be. So have a nice day. Thank you.